Today we're going to talk about the Verner 3V. Been a lot of questions about this engine and a lot of comments and people wanting to know a lot of information. I've been doing a lot of testing and figuring out what I wanted to work and what I felt worked and how to mount it and all aspects of it. It's not like there's a bunch of them out there like the half VW where you just bolt it on and go. And anyway, we are using the concept that we're mounting it to where the half VW was mounted. That way you can build a mount, pull your half VW on or off, put the mount on, put your engine on, and finish your installation. There's goods and bads, and if you're building an airplane from scratch or making major modifications, it would probably be far better to go ahead and just put it right onto the frame. Anyway, what we've done is we've built a square frame in front of the frame so that any vibrations, movement, pressures are moved back into the framework at the same identical locations as where the half VW is located. Now what we've done is taken those bushings out and we've replaced them with a aluminum insert that you can then drill, so you can match drill your holes on your new frame in case they're off a tiny bit. And anyway, if you saw this at Oshkosh, you might have noticed that I had the engine mounted a little bit different in this area, and there was a reason for that. I saw several videos where the guys over in Europe were doing it that way, and I decided that was not the way to go. I went this way, and there's some precedents. The guys in Kentucky, Tree Hugger, that's how theirs is mounted, similar to this. Now I made some changes, but now I have the soft rubber in here, and the soft rubber in here made all the difference in the world. This thing sitting there idling, even when it's going through its shake period above idle, you don't feel anything transmitted anywhere that bothers you. It's just like you see the engine moving around, and it is really nifty neat. Now, the Verner 3V, one of the advantages is the fact that it makes its horsepower at a much lower RPM. It don't make any more horsepower, but it has a lot more torque. This prop is a 67 inch diameter, 30-inch pitch. My other prop, the Tennessee, was a 58-20, and the performance prop that works so good, I think, was a 54-24. Anyway, this is a huge prop, and one of the differences when you're flying it, you see that massive amount of wood floating around out there. It's like, wow, that's huge. Anyway, it feels great. It runs great. I'm just changed the oil tank. I basically operated off the theory that I was going to pre-build everything I could get before I got the engine, and then when I got the engine, put it together. Well, a lot of things didn't quite work right, and then engine mounts I've changed. I got the oil tank. You can take a look at the front of it, and it's a little bit cleaner installation right now. Shortened hoses that are more flexible, so that the transmission is not, there's no transmission of engine moved back into the oil tank, and it seems to work quite well. Now, I have my fill tube a little bit further back now, and basically when you get the engine, it comes with these flanges right here. The exhaust pipe, I used J-bends, a piece of 1 1/8 inch 030 or 035 goes right into the flanges, and it goes right into the J-bends, and I just welded them in place. Nothing fancy, but it works. And in terms of performance, I've got this starting, so I can start it with an electric starter, or I can start it manually. Like most big airplanes, most span cans, the throttle, if the throttle spring fails, the engine goes to full open. And so when you're hand propping it, it's something to think about. And so you got to make sure it's chocked real good. You make sure it's at idle, because the thing about this, it's got a tremendous amount of thrust. And my standard chocks, I can go over them like they're not even there at power. And so anyway, the throttle cable setup is different than the Mikuni, so I had to make some changes in that area. The oil pressure, nothing spectacular there. I just have my same oil pressure gauge I had before. This thing has an internal, makes power, makes electrical. You got to have a battery because it's got the solid state ignition. It's got 3 solid state ignition setups, 1 for each cylinder. Not that if you lose one, you're going to go too far, but in a dire emergency, if you lost one, it'd be better than having your engine just completely quit if you were in a place where there's just absolutely no way you could land at that point in time. The carburetor has a 3/16" hose. Everything for the Mikunis and everything else we've been doing is 1/4 inch, so you have to reduce down to that size. It comes with a little air cleaner, and the carburetor is a Walbro 37B, I believe it is. It seems to work quite well. On the high end, it's like, I'm not sure it's working as well as I'd like for it up there, so still got to do a lot of research up there. But the installation actually works out quite well, and you can sit there and see it moving on the videos. It's amazing. It doesn't transmit near the vibration back into the airframe at any point in time as a half VW. Verner has a nice, nifty, neat little slogan up here on their company logo. Well, there's 2 reasons for that. If you put this together properly, when that is lined up, your top cylinder is at top dead center. That way, one of the problems with radial engines of all shapes, sizes, and descriptions is you get oil in your lower cylinders, either by the rings or blow by, whatever. You get a little oil down there, and you go to start them up, and you got something that's non-compressible oil. There's a little drain valve down here. Before you start it, you always open that drain valve, see if there's anything that drains out, and then close it. And then you turn it over a minimum of 6 blades. That way you're making sure there's no oil or anything, gas, anything in the cylinders that will cause it to slug. If, for instance, the first 2 cylinders fire and the third one's got something in there, you can blow the whole entire top off the cylinder. Kind of ruins your whole flying day. I'm getting ready to remove the starter and ring gear. There's about 10 pounds right there, and when I do that, I'm going to end up about 4 pounds lighter than the half VW installation Powerwall forward. That includes the battery. In other words, the battery is required for this installation, so that's included in that weight difference. And the prop, as you can guess, the props are considerably heavier, and as I move forward, I'll go through all my paperwork and document all this and put it on eaglersnest.com. Probably the biggest downside that I've come up with or know of on these engines is simply the fact that they're a little pricey. But other than that, that's all I'm going to talk about. The thing about this versus the half VW, I had a 45 horse, and it's 45 horse at 3,600 RPM. Well, I never could get to 3,600 RPM, but on a good day, it would climb fairly good. However, on a good day, this one will outclimb the half VW big time, and it will outclimb the half VW on a bad day more than the half VW outclimbed on a good day. So that big prop and that more efficient RPM really makes a difference in terms of climb and getting off the ground. With the half VW, there's 150-foot marks at the end of the runway, and I use those. I get to the front of those, I go to full power, and my goal is to get off the ground by the time I get to the end of them. When it's dead calm, I use the full 150 foot. When there's a little bit of wind like there is today, by the time I get to 150 feet, if I'm doing everything right, I'm 10 foot in the air. The half VW would barely get you off. It would get you off at the end of that, before you got to the end of it. But you were really working at it. This thing here, you don't have to work at it. It just flat does it. The other thing that this does is it outruns, when you're up cruising wide open throttle, it outruns the half VW. Now, it also uses a little bit more fuel, and that side of it I'm still working on, and it's too early to give you any kind of a report on that. But I'm using, for flight planning, I'm using 3 gallons an hour. Whereas my half VW, when it was doing everything it was supposed to, it was about 2.4 to 2.5 gallons an hour. And anyway, there's a lot more things I've got to learn. One of the neat things, because this is a solid state ignition, radio interference, non-existent. I have a B-light, airspeed, vertical speed, and altimeter set up that I couldn't use with my half VW with the mag, but with this engine here, it just works perfect. And it weighs 1.4 ounces, and you power it from the electrical system you got here. And so you end up with a real nifty, neat altimeter, vertical speed, and airspeed all at once. It gives you everything, and it's a neat little instrument. Anyway, I'm not sure what else to talk about here today. In terms of noise, this thing idling has absolutely beautiful noise when it's doing what it's supposed to. When you're flying and at cruise, it's the dB readings on this are quite a bit lower than they are on the half VW, by about 6 dB. The thing I know is at Oshkosh, the half VW, if you fly around the pattern with your headset off, you hear a lot of noise, a lot of engine, and it's quite noisy. With this one here, with your headset off, you hear more wind noise. You don't hear all that much engine noise, and so it's actually quieter, and the people on the ground tell me it's quieter. I haven't taken any readings, any dB readings of that yet, but those are things to come. But anyway, that's about it for right now, and I'll put more on as I get further into the development of this. If you're going to Rio Vista for the Northern California Legal Eagle gathering next weekend, it should be there, and you should be able to see it and hear it, and get a better impression of it. Okay, have a good day.